For today's episode, I'm bringing you along with me to complete this warehouse space using GP Tinted and Tinted Glaze. So, let's get into it. I'm just measuring out the size of the area. Which means if I'm working out about 5 squares a litre, each kit should get me like 5-6 meters. It's not important, but it does help you figure out how many kits you'll need to go through in a certain area, just so you know you're not stretching the product too thin. It's only when you start going through like 3 or 4 kits would I consider this an option to do. So because we test a lot over this floor, there's a lot of build up and a lot of height difference compared to some of the walkways and whatnot. So to get that mirror finish, we had to use Grant from JBL and his team to use PCDs to grind off most of the epoxy and metallics especially, and get the floor as flat as possible. So when I put my coats over, it'll be somewhat neat. So after they've finished, there was still some PCD marks left or ridges along some of the metallics where their big machine just didn't quite get properly. So I just went through with a little 9-inch grinder with a fairly passive blade on it and just smoothed over those edges. While we would recommend patching on the prime coat or before the prime coat, I'm going to patch after because I'm hoping the prime coat can fill up most of my whatnot. And then I'll sand tomorrow, which will hopefully take down all the ridges and leave a fairly flat floor. If there are any holes or things that do need patching, I'll patch then and then do my tinted glaze. The only reason I'm able to get away with it today is because most of this floor is actually coated still. So we're doing less of a prime coat and more of just a thick base coat before our top coat. If we were doing this straight over raw concrete, I would recommend doing 2 GP Tinteds. One as a sacrifice coat almost, and then your second one as your prime coat. After the grinding, I've sanded our humps where I wasn't able to get a grinder, and I've just taped up around our exclusion zones just so I can get a nice straight edge along them. So we don't tape it up against the wall for pretty much any epoxy work. Reason being is if you tape up against the wall, the epoxy seeps in behind the tape and you can actually make it look worse. So you want to avoid touching the wall. Apart from that, it's pretty much good to go.
How would I tackle it? Much like Matt is with the buckets on the floor. So I know each mix needs to cover a certain amount of square meters to get my coverage rates right. But I used to also use tape on the wall or tape on the framework. So I know I would measure out the floor and I know that that's 80 square meters or 50 square meters, and then I'll do 50 square meter lots depending on the mixes that I'm doing. Well, it all comes down to reading the concrete. From the get-go, there's no matter what spec you're delivered, the spec doesn't always take into consideration the conditions of the concrete, because sometimes you don't know until you start grinding. So it's once you've viewed the concrete before grinding, viewing the concrete whilst you're grinding, becoming aware of things like pinholes, repairs and all that sort of stuff, and then adjusting the job on the fly really. So because the variances in this slab aren't too extreme, 100% solid self-leveling epoxy is going to allow you to do exactly what Matt's doing.
Just mixing up the part A, so getting all the ingredients that might have settled to the bottom back up to the top and getting a uniform consistency. So every batch may change. There's no way to really stop that when making the product, as 1% change in humidity or half a degree in temperature, 15 seconds longer in the vat can change the color. So checking your batch, it's just checking to see all your batches are the same. If they are, it's great. If not, or on larger jobs, you try to keep all the same batches together and you try to, as your last layer, use all the same batch, just so it's all the same color. As this is a prime coat, I don't really care. I could have 5 different batches here, it doesn't really matter. With my glaze, I'll make sure all my tints are the same batch. And then I'll have to be careful with how much I put in tomorrow, as I need pretty much the exact same amount in every glaze. Because if I've got like 1 liter in one and 0.9 in another mix, you can see that slight difference. Having an area that's set up especially if you're working alone, makes working a hell of a lot easier, because it means every time you finish with a mix, you can come over, mix up your next mix, go back on the floor as quick as possible. If you don't have a nice area, or if you like have to mix up another bucket, find a bucket somewhere, you leave time between your two mixes, which can lead to color differences or even roller lines. But I don't know, I'd say over 800 squares or so, you'd look at setting up 2 rollers. Not for someone else to use, but because your first roller is actually going to start curing on you. On 1,000 square meters, it should take you 8 to 10 hours to do that floor. Epoxy starts tacking off after about 8 hours, which means all the product in your roller is going to start tacking off, and you're just not going to have a fun time with rolling that out on the floor. So having a second roller means you can just keep rolling. So, area's prepped. I'm going to start mixing up my parts. So I've set up everything that's dry, that's easy to set up, and I'm going to start playing with the wet stuff now. Granted, this won't cure on me, just I like playing with the wet stuff last. No one likes handles. No one trusts the handles. Aim for that little black mark, which is roughly 2 litres. Going straight into my 15 litres of part A. I'm going to give it a quick mix. Well, the floor itself, the concrete itself it's more porous, but I'm going over the epoxy. So that's why I'm adding roughly 10%, which is our recommended amount. If I add a bit more, I might get a bit more self-leveling out of the epoxy, but it'll just be a bit harder to apply thicker. So that's why I'm keeping it down at 10%. Alright, so tip when pouring is, as you can see, I'm pouring out sideways. This is just to stop it glugging out. So I'm keeping a nice consistent stream. Glugging like that means it can splash back at you, which is dangerous for your eyes and for cameras, and just general safety of skin and all things around you. So with my 2.5 litres of hardener, I take the handle off again, scoping out my work, thinking, do I need anything else before I set off a time bomb? No, I'm good to coat. Chuck in my hardener, not glugging, just keeping nice consistent stream. So with this, give it a quick mix, and I have my mix. Alright, like any floor, you have to cut in first. If you cut in after, you're walking on your epoxy. So there, I'm just feeling the temperature of the bucket. If it was getting warm, I'd know to use it quickly. If it was hot, I'd waste it. You're better off wasting $500 worth of product than putting it on the floor and having to grind it out and use $500 worth of product to fix it. So I'm aiming for about 1 meter and a bit off the wall, puddle to fill up my roller, and then I'm going to run your way. The more sections you have, the more risk of like joint marks you're going to see. So doing whole lines at a time means you only have a line here, other line here and there. So we call it ribbons. So you want to ribbon out your whole floor. When you're coating, you're generally going over a floor 3 times. The first one's just to spread that ribbon out. The second pass is, filling in all your gaps that you might have missed. And then the third pass is what you call the feathering off or finishing off pass. And that's where you're blending it into your previous line. So with your ribbon, or you're cutting in even, you just want to blend it in, just so it doesn't look like there's multiple lines there, but rather one cohesive line. Alright, I gotta cut another couple meters up this wall. You always want to try and keep your batches the same, and it's less about color on the prime coat and more about just heat and stopping it from curing. So I left that 3 litres in that bucket, would have cured by the time I finished mixing up the other bucket. So it's just about rotating that heat. And once I'm down to last little dribbles, tip the bucket up, because all that's part A. If I left that tipped upside down on the floor, I'd have a soft spot tomorrow. Once you're down to the last little dribbles, and as you might have seen, even once the bucket's upside down, I'm moving it along where I've already poured out product. So even if I am pouring out unmixed part A, it's at least going to mix in with the rest of it. But if I tip the bucket upside down, you're going to have soft spots because it's just unmixed part A. And I'm aiming for about there. But generally you don't want to be light on, especially if you're trying to aim for thick. I'll add more just to, when I do the next ribbon, I'll just add a bit more here and blend that in. But yeah, I'm gonna go over this again. So especially when like blending it in with my next line, I'll make sure to go over it just to add a bit more product there. So the first pass, the spreading pass, I virtually don't go in at all. I just touch the lip of it. The second pass, I'm going in 6 inches to 12 inches, or 15 centimeters to 30 centimeters, thereabouts. And that's just taking the ridge off the two and blending them a little bit. And then the third pass is where you stretch your pole out and you try to get as far as you can into the previous line. So that's my second pass done. So I stretch my pole out, lock it in, go as far as I can to the previous line. So that's to try and join the two parts together essentially, like the two ribbons. And it also helps to even out the epoxy. So because I've got a little less on this line, and I know that line was a little thick, I'm pulling some from over there and bringing it back. Making sure they always move and never stopping at the end, just so I don't leave any puddles up there that I can't get to. It's not a bad idea to wear spike shoes either when doing a warehouse. Means you can go back over your floor and fix anything that you need to, but it's not necessary. Alright. Is that line done? Which means set this back here. Take my bucket. Alright, gonna continue with this floor and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
So it's the next day, we've come back and there's been some issues. It's actually not the next day, it's the day after because we actually fixed those issues yesterday. Those issues being expected, which was where we ground down to concrete and along some of the ridges that didn't get ground down properly, it was just rough and left a lot of texture there. So we've gone through and patched those up. Now how we patched those was using a combination of GP clear and resin thickener. So we sort of mixed it up to be paste alike, but with enough, usability and wettability that when we push it onto the concretey sections, it would still soak into all the pinholes and fill them up, and enough viscosity where when we put it over some of the ridges and whatnot, it would keep its shape and level off those ridges, making it more smooth of a transition. I've then gone ahead and sanded the entire floor, making it look white. So as you can see behind me, it's ready to be coated again. And while we didn't need to sand, sanding helped to get rid of all those sharp ridges, high points, and maybe entrapped impurities and whatnot from the prime coat. So today's plan is essentially clean this up, microfiber mop and vacuum, and then we'll start coating. Today's coat is going to be our Tinted Glaze mix, which is, just as the name implies, it's glaze using 350E Epoxy Tint. And we're actually swapping out the Glaze hardener for Tinted Winter Hardener. Now, that's not because it's a tinted glaze, it's actually because I'm just after that winter curing properties. Due to the cold weather, winter hardener is going to make this floor look even better, considering it doesn't have Sparta 60 or tetraethane to bring the gloss back up, which is the main thing. So winter hardener is essentially being used as it'll be glossier finish than if we use the standard glaze hardener, just due to the high humidity and low temperature. So that's the plan today, is we're going to glaze this floor, make it look perfect and like a mirror finish, and hopefully some of the ridges that are still here will flatten out and we won't see them, and some of the high points and like plateaus will maybe not have too much of an effect on the mirror, especially with the lights. We shall see. If there are some issues, there's always more time, and what we'll do is we'll come back tomorrow to sand the floor, do another tinted glaze. If you're replicating what we're doing here and you find yourself questioning whether the ridges are flat enough, we would recommend using GP Tinted again and doing another prime coat.
All right, gonna continue with this floor and I'll see you guys tomorrow. So in the floor we have quite a few pimples or dust specks, however you want to look at it. There's no be all end all solution other than cleaning, and you don't stop cleaning until, just don't stop cleaning really. You'll always have a floor with at least one pimple in it from dust. But the best way to avoid it is taping up all your walls, all your doors, and essentially having a clean room or a hazmat room where nothing can get in, and then cleaning the whole room down before you start coating, and coating from there, and keeping the room closed off until that floor is cured. Fortunately, being a large warehouse, it's not easy to hazmat the room, so we're stuck with a couple pimples in the floor. You essentially want to clean before you put those coats down, so you don't get any dust entrapment. It's really just any of your high gloss floors that you want to look like a mirror finish. So your metallics, your top coats like Sparta 60 and tetraethane, and glaze in this case. Another common time to clean is with metallics, as metallics can show dust trails which look like shooting stars and comets. Thanks for watching this video on our custom application of Glaze Epoxy Warehouse Finish. If you need any help with this system or others, feel free to contact the team. And if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like and comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.